Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. This is Ammaar bin Salim and welcome to another episode of Out Loud with Ammaar. This is season 2 and I can say that we have effectively moved into the latter up of the second season today. Introductions have always been very difficult for me. And today through Out Loud we bring you another conversation. I have an industry leader on the other side. She's not in Pakistan right now. She's in China. She's a communications enthusiast, a leadership communications coach, a TEDx speaker, a filmmaker. And I think I should stop at that because I can go on and on. But yeah, thank you so much, Nausheen. How are you? How are you doing today?
Thanks so much, Amar, for having me and for the very kind introduction. I'm great. I'm great. It's a bright sunny day. It's been raining here like on and off very heavily. So we're always happy for the days of sun, which is not something I ever thought I would say coming from Karachi.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate sunny days now.
Yeah, things have always been. I remember, I think 2 years back, I was in Karachi and I had gone there in January and I was like, wow, the weather was beautiful. But at night, you would still need air conditioning, which is something that doesn't happen in Lahore. Because in Lahore, the cold comes around October, late October, early November.
Oh, yeah.
And then we start wearing jackets very quickly, sweaters. And I think this is a concept that's generally lost on people from Karachi.
Yeah. I grew up with no concept of a winter wardrobe. Like that just did not exist. We had the same clothes all year round. And then I moved to Lahore and I was like, oh, I need winter clothes? What? It's so weird. So the rest of the world lives with that. So it's just Karachi and some other bizarre cities that just have summer the whole year round.
Summer, yeah. And I'm going to go back to Karachi now in maybe another 20-25 days. I'm going to experience and how it's now. But yeah, I love Karachi, and that's strange coming out of a Lahore. but yeah.
Well, I love Lahore, and that's strange coming out of a Karachiite. So
yeah.
Yeah, I have such very fond memories of Lahore, for sure.
No, I'm sure you did your undergrad program here, right?
Yes.
So our audience must be interested in learning about your own early life, as I was when I first came across your LinkedIn post and learned that you were in Karachi and then you went for a 3-month trip to Nepal, and then you can go on, of course. But this is what I remember from your LinkedIn post. And you went to Nepal. You had all sorts of adventurous experiences over there, and then you came back, and the first thing you did, you went back to your company, quit the job. Had a family decision to make, and then started a whole different way of life. And I mean, that was like very filmy, that was like very filmy. But it's true. I mean, I know you've been talking about it, but this is something that many people are scared of doing, not only in Pakistan, but even outside. And now that there is more awareness about mental health, about how your own self is more important than the job you do, people have started to talk about this thing. But of course, we can never, subtract the reality out of the equation. So again, my audience would be, very interested as learning about your early life, your upbringing, your university life, and then how was Karachi like when you were young? I mean, you're still young. I mean, don't hold me on that. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So definitely I think I'm one of the oldest millennial age bracket. So I'm barely a millennial. Like I missed being a Gen Xer by like 2 years or something. So so I am old. I was born and I grew up in Karachi, as you said. I was raised by my mom. My dad died when I was really young. And my mom raised me. She was a very fierce and independent woman. And I think I got a lot of my ideals of feminism and what it's like to be a strong woman from her. She would always tell me that you're not lesser than any man in any way whatsoever. Don't ever feel that. Don't let anyone ever tell you that. March bravely into any space and own the space and be the woman that you are. And those life lessons always stayed with me. I never did think I was lesser than any man, and I never thought that I shouldn't do something that a man can do. That has its pros and cons. Sometimes I think I think I'm too much of a too much of a person who like pressurizes myself to do a lot. She had very high expectations of me, and I think I really made sure I tried to make sure that I rose to those expectations. She's no longer with us, but I think now there's probably even more pressure for me to live up to the woman that she knew I could be, or that she wanted me to be. So that colored a lot of my early life. I was a nerd. I always I tried to always like come first in class or second. It was,
and you're also the one who mentions it in their LinkedIn tagline, on their LinkedIn tagline, that you're nerds for life. I was like, wow.
Yeah, now that it's cool to be a nerd again, I was like, yeah, this is who I am, so I'm going to be proud of it. So yeah, I was very studious throughout my school years, and by the time I got to LUMS, I think that was the time that was very eye-opening. It was a time where I started asking a lot of questions, started learning a lot about the world that I hadn't learned before. This was the early 2000s. So yeah, sure, we had access to the internet, but it wasn't stable. We still had dial-up. At home.
I remember you used to get those cards like for 10 rupees or 20 rupees or 50 rupees, and then you would get a internet time for maybe an hour or 2 hours, depending on the amount that you were spending.
Right.
And it wasn't smooth.
Can't even imagine that now. Nope. You had to just wait for like pictures to load, and yeah. But I was always like, I was a huge fan of the internet. Like as soon as I got a computer at home, I think I was maybe 16. I would just be glued to the computer all the time. And I think for me, it was like a portal into the rest of the world. We weren't well off, so we never traveled outside of the country. So for me, it was a way to travel outside, to make friends that were not like me, to experience like different ways like that people were thinking and speaking and existing. And yeah, I just knew like this was this magical world, and I was always online. It was, I don't know if you remember, or well, you might be too young to remember, but it was a time of IRC. We used to be on IRC, which is Internet Relay Chat.
Yeah, I mean, many people who are slightly older than me, that they keep telling me about this chapter, IRC, and I was like, okay, I know chat rooms too, because I had lots of friends over there, and that was the first time that we could talk to the other gender as well. Because I mean, coming from Pakistan, you predominantly were from you're always from a conservative family, so you're not really accustomed to talking to girls and all of that. So I think I've had my share of conversations on the chat rooms, but it was MSN.
Right. MSN came after. Yeah. I mean, it was close. It was IRC, then ICQ for a while. I don't know if you ever used ICQ, and then MSN. And yeah, we used MSN a lot as well. And got to LUMS. I did a computer science major, but halfway through my LUMS experience, I realized that I was way more attracted to the social sciences, to philosophy, to literature, anthropology. And that's where I really understood that this is what really draws me, especially anthropology and psychology. So things like, what makes our brains work? What makes us act the way we do in social situations? How can we positively or negatively impact people's environments, the way that people behave, and so that it has an impact on how they think and how they act in the future. There's just so much there, and it was so rich that I didn't want to be that person who's just like coding a lot of her time, which is the path that I was on in the computer science major. Of course, now I understand, like, it's not just about that. But at the time, we had a very limited understanding of what these careers could really be. So I graduated from computer science, from LUMS with a computer science degree. and I never worked in computer science for a day in my life. I ended up joining P&G, where I was in PR. And
you went
I was
back to Karachi,
working.
or did you stay in Lahore?
I went back to Karachi. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, Lahore was that beautiful period of 4 years, and then went back to Karachi. I think I definitely had some reverse culture shock, going back and living in Karachi and not being in Lahore anymore. It was definitely a period of adjustment, and started working at Procter & Gamble. Was there for 5 years. So I started in PR, working with media relations, CSR, corporate PR, and it was great. But then I decided that I wanted to move to marketing, which was not the best decision, because I realized that I was not the person who was really into like, how should we sell this product, or how can we make more sales? I couldn't get my brain to care about it. I just couldn't. I really tried. But so that was one of the bad decisions that I made, that eventually led me to becoming really unhappy, because I was a top performer in the PR department. And then when I switched,
what made you what made you switch to marketing from a very successful career in the PR department?
It was a desire to do more meaningful work, because P&G is a marketing company, and to do anything that moves the needle, you have to be in marketing, more or less. This is probably a controversial statement, but that's, yeah.
That you really have to be in the marketing department at one point in life, because life in your company, because that is something, that is an experience that takes you, that helps you go through to the top of the ladder.
And you can really make decisions that, help steer the brand forward. In PR, your influence is limited to an extent, but it depends on how the company is structured. If the company is more of a sales company, then sales is the department to be in. But P&G and a lot of FMCGs, I think Unilever and Colgate, they pride themselves on being more, actually, I don't know about Colgate, but I know this is true for Unilever as well, where they pride themselves on being a marketing company. Marketing is the one that kind of steers the ship in a way. So that's what really drew me to it. But I was very naive in just thinking that, I want to be in a place where I can influence, like where I can have more influence. But I didn't really think about my own skill set and whether that would be a good fit with it. So that led me to a period of life where I was very unhappy, where I would dread going to work every day. I would, wake up crying because I couldn't bear the thought of going to work. And the worst part was that I had the one who had done this to myself. No one had forced me to do it. So I was kind of feeling very guilty, and just feeling in an overall very dark place. And I was feeling very ungrateful, or because everyone would still be so impressed that, wow, you work at P&G, you should be so proud of yourself. And there I was feeling sorry for myself on the inside, right? So a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety.
I think one of the dilemmas of getting into a situation like this is that you on the inside are not happy, and you know it.
Yeah.
But the people who you care about, and the people who have always, been around you, they think differently. And they are the ones who tell you that, you are doing so great for yourself, and you are going to go to, better places, all of those things. But on the inside, you're not satisfied. Yeah.
And there's that huge disconnect between what you think you want for yourself versus what you think you should be doing, because everyone else thinks it's a great thing to do, because society has just placed such a huge importance on doing that, on being successful. Like just this definition of success, really, which is so restrictive in a way. So that was the time that you were referring to, from my LinkedIn post. And also I talk about it in my TEDx talk. That's kind of what starts off the story, where it's just about being at a time in your life where you feel that you can't take it anymore. I do think it is also linked to the decades changing. I do believe that all of us go through this when we get close to 30, and then again when we get close to 40, which is where I am now. And I've had another round of transformations. So I was really at that stage where I needed to make a huge change. And fortunately, I could take a sabbatical and just kind of go off and do some thinking or soul searching or distraction or relaxation or whatever it was. It wasn't, it wasn't extremely deliberate or planned out. I just kind of went with the flow. And then 10 years later is when I actually tried to put like some sense and structure into what happened. But what was actually happening at that time was very ad hoc and random. And I was just kind of seeing like how far different rabbit holes go. And so it was just a period of exploration, just exploring and being curious about things. So that was the time where I explored theater and improv. I ended up forming an improv community in Karachi, which was not planned at all, but it actually ended up like we ended up running it for more than a year, where a lot of people got into stand-up comedy and improv because we started this community. It was really interesting, and got into like we ended up writing for a really crappy late night comedy TV show, ended up making short films. So all of this was basically happening, and I applied for and I got the Fulbright scholarship to go to New York, and that was, I guess, a second turning point. This was after I had quit work and kind of decided that I wanted to explore life outside social norms in a way. So I wasn't married anymore. I was very much like, I guess you could say I was living like a free hippie-like life for a while. And that was definitely a big part of my journey. So then I went to New York and I did my master's in media studies because I was exploring filmmaking. Like I was exploring PR and marketing for a while. And then before that, I met my husband, and we moved to China because he got a job here. And we actually just wanted to come and see what China was about, what it was like. We never intended to stay for this long, and we've been here for 7 years now. And when I first came here, I was very unemployable. I didn't speak the language. I wasn't particularly interested in working for a very intense Chinese company that would have like a work culture that would like swallow up my life. And I just wasn't very, I wasn't very attracted by either the film jobs or the media jobs or the marketing jobs. So my husband encouraged me to try to be an entrepreneur for the first time. And it was a bizarre thought. I had never planned this for myself. I had never thought I would be my own boss. It was just not a thing. I had always worked for other people my whole life, and had always been a fan of institutions because they make you feel safe.
Yeah.
They make you feel, like you have a career path and you have a fixed salary and you know where you're going and you have
a brand that you can associate yourself with.
Oh yeah.
And that's important, especially if you're I don't know about other countries, but I can certainly talk about Pakistan. And this is, what is embedded into us from the very beginning. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We're really big on the big brands. They give you respect and authority by default.
Yeah.
In a way. So it's a great path to take. And, a lot of my friends, I would say maybe most of my close friends, are still working in companies. And that was the other scary part, right? This was like, because when I was becoming an entrepreneur, I was like, well into I was in my early 30s. And by that time, a lot of my friends who had like these great career paths from the time we graduated, they were like at the VP level, or they were like in senior management. And here I was, starting my own thing, first as a freelancer, then a solopreneur, and starting my little team of like 2 or 3 people. So it was very much like starting over again. And also in a new field, one that I was not as familiar with as someone who'd been making films since they were a teenager. And, there are a lot of people like that who have been passionate about being a filmmaker since they were very young. And that was not me. It was a new thing for me. So I did that. I started filmmaking, commercial filmmaking and visual strategy startup here, and ran that for the last 7 years. at the end of 2020s, when we got very close to burning out, and I realized that I had again kind of, jumped into entrepreneurship the same way that I jumped out of a corporate job, the same way I like jumped into other things in life. I've always, jumped first and look later kind of person. So I realized that I needed to take a step back, not be in a place where I'm creating a toxic work environment for myself, my team. We were always stressed. We were a small team, and we were bootstrapped. So we always had to take on a lot of projects. And this is very typical for small creative agencies. They have to take on more projects than they can handle at times. And then those times get really tough. And eventually those times get very drawn out as well, because then you don't know when to stop. You don't know at what point you can be secure enough that you can, stop taking on more projects than you can handle. So you're working. I remember there were times where we were working till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I would go home, grab dinner, then get back to the office. And one of those times where I was walking back to the office, I really think it was like 1:30 in the morning. And I live very close to the office, so I could walk back. And I remember on the walk thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm walking back to the office at 1:30 a.m. to meet my team member who's been working this whole time, so that I can check and make sure this work is good so we can submit it to the client tomorrow. I mean, what have I done? This is not right. This is not the work culture that I should be creating. This is not what I should be in, and I shouldn't drag other people in with me, because it's just a slippery slope. Like, you can't work like that. So all those realizations added up, and then finally at the end of 2020 we realized like I need to really restructure. So I let go of the full-time team. It was a very hard decision. I had sleepless nights, and I didn't really know what to do, but I ultimately think it was better to disband and then restructure. And I then took time to basically reconnect with my priorities in life, which I had been ignoring for 7 years because I was busy working. When you're an entrepreneur, everything just like eats up your life. Like, everything work related eats up your entire life. I had no hobbies. I had barely any friends. I think I was in a place where I would maybe see my friends once a month if I was lucky, and I would just work. I would just work all the time. So that's when I took a step back. And then 2021 has been really a year of really deep soul searching. And for the first time, which is bizarre to say, at 38, it was the first time that I had really properly thought about what I wanted in life and what I wanted to work as. And I realized that the common thread from all the way from my love for philosophy and literature and anthropology to PR and marketing and filmmaking was that throughout this time, the one thing I had done basically for free was delivering workshops, talks, and trainings on everything
for
from
free.
For free most of the time. Like, that's what I realized, like, during all of these forays into different fields like marketing and PR and filmmaking and improv and theater, the one thing that was consistent for the last 15 years was that I had delivered workshops, trainings, and talks for the love of it. And I really loved doing it. Every time I did it, it energized me. I was so passionate about it. And I had delivered workshops on so many different things, from communication skills and leadership skills, which is actually what I was trained to be a trainer in back at P&G. So I was a P&G certified trainer. And then I started, like, I did workshops in like resume skills and interviewing skills, and then eventually filmmaking, visual strategy, branding. So I just kind of ran the gamut of like trainings and workshops. So in 2021, I realized, like, this is the medium that I want to be working in. And then what is the message? What is my actual specialization? And that took me another few months to really kind of sharpen and refine. And I did that through a process, through an interactive, iterative process, very kind of building in public style on LinkedIn, where I started off just posting and just getting my thoughts out and seeing like what was resonating with people. So yeah, I also realized for the past 7 years, I actually had been coaching CEOs to talk on camera. It was just always part of film projects. So we had done, for example, keynotes and product launches for companies, and I had worked on the production and direction of the whole video, but then I had also worked with the CEO to work on his speech if there was a segment where he's talking. And I had worked with him or her to deliver their talk and to make sure that the way they came across on camera was as natural and as confident as they were in real life. So I really thought of all these experiences that I had that I can piece together and craft into my specialization. And that's where I realized that what I really love doing is not just talking and training, but really working with people so that they can be better at public speaking. And the people that I had worked with the most were leaders, specifically CEOs and CTOs who had not talked on camera before, who were not comfortable on a stage, who hadn't given talks to an external audience. They had mostly just always talked internally to the company. So I also ended up working with a lot of CEOs, working on their media interviews because we also ended up doing some PR work. It was my first job. I already had the skill set. So I did that with a lot of Asian clients here as well. So a lot of CEOs here, again, had never really given a media interview before. Same for a lot of VPs. So I helped them really understand the right words to say in a media interview, how to respond to questions, how to use like the block and bridge technique, where like if you get a question that you may not directly have the answer to, or you may not want to talk about it, how do you accept the question and then, bridge to a part of your own
really
messaging strategy?
Handheld them for a while.
Yeah.
This is something I also wanted to talk to you about. There are leaders, and we've all come across our bosses that are leaders and people who have very good speaking skills, very good interpersonal skills as well. And in terms of one-to-many communications, they excel at that as well. But when it comes to, them knowing that there's a camera in front of them and they have to look into the camera, even the biggest bosses, the best leaders, they get shy of speaking in front of a camera. So I think it is something of more of a international or universal phenomena. But what do you think happens in the mind when people see that there's a camera that they have to, speak into, even if they are the best, even if they have gone through the best, academic experiences, best professional experiences, still?
Yeah, this is a great question. And this is like one of the first things that you realize when you start working in the public speaking space is that there are a lot of people who are super competent, super confident in real life, like in one-on-one interactions. But then the moment that they have to talk on camera or the moment they have to talk on a stage in front of a crowd, they are not able to tap into their real personality, but then they just become stiff. They just get potentially stage fright, or they get the nerves. They just they're not able to be themselves in the same way. And it's one of those things that we're not used to doing. So you feel like you're out of your depth. You feel like you're out of your comfort zone. Specifically with the camera, I feel like it's even harder. So with an audience, it's hard because you have to think of the switch. So when a leader is talking to their team, especially if they're talking one-on-one or even if they're talking in a small group, they get instant feedback. They don't have to lead the conversation all the time.
They can interact.
They interact. Yeah, they can respond to questions. They don't have to always have all the messaging in their head to kind of, transmit. And the feedback is really important, where, they can see that their message is being received. They can see that people are appreciating what they're saying, nodding heads, smiles, all of those things feedback, really count.
No.
When you're on stage, so that's like the next level of the first time you're like out of your comfort zone, yeah, you can get some audience feedback, but people don't perceive it to be the same level of feedback as the feedback that you get in a one-on-one or in a smaller group environment. For me, I really think it's possible to take that scenario and use it to build feedback for yourself. You can tell when the audience is with you, and you can tell when they are not. You can tell when people are on their phones. You can tell when everyone is silent and looking at you. So that's how you have a dialogue with the audience. And that's what I train leaders on, to make that mind shift from, thinking of interaction as only one thing, and see that the audience is interacting with you, just in a different way. But then the second level of being out of your comfort zone is when you're on camera, because then you have no audience in front of you. The audience will watch it later. And all you have to do is build that audience in your head. And that is hard. So the camera,
build that audience
speaking
in
to
your
a camera.
head.
Yeah. So that part is harder. It's harder than being on a stage, I think. But of course, it depends on the stage. But yeah, that it really removes that interaction. It removes the element of someone, nodding at you and saying, yeah, okay, cool. When you're, again, on camera, a lot of people prefer if they do an interview versus just giving a keynote. Keynotes are, really hard, because there you're literally just, you're the leader, and you're showcasing your product. You're doing a product launch, or you're doing an update. You're talking about your company, and you have to talk as if you're talking to a team, as if you're talking to your customer one-on-one. And that requires another level of a mindset shift. So I think it's really it's changing the modes of communication. It's changing that environment, which really is jarring for a lot of people.
Right, exactly. And I think, as you've mentioned, people converse differently, people interact differently when they're in small groups as compared to when they have to speak in a camera where there is no audience. Then you have to keep in mind what the audience is going to look for from your talk. And also when you're delivering a keynote, because that is the time when you are speaking to the audience and there's only limited feedback that you get. And of course, if you're speaking to an audience of 100 maybe, and there are 20 people who are using their mobile, that means that they've gone disinterested. And that indicates something about you. And you really need to, come up with a turnaround strategy at that time. So, of course, it is a lot of added pressure as well. So, but and what do you say are the leaders that you have trained in the past? Have they been open to your suggestions? Because it requires a lot of, self-evaluation. It requires a lot of changing in terms of learning how to communicate, understanding that your target audience needs something else from you. So do you think people and the leaders specifically are open to those ideas? Because I think it's a job requirement.
That's another great question. I think that when it comes to crunch time, when they know that there's going to be a product launch and their face needs to be part of a keynote, when they know that the company is becoming more public, maybe they're going for an IPO, so literally becoming public, or if the company is just looking for more public exposure, more PR exposure, if they really are convinced that they need to be the face or one of the faces of the company, then yeah, they take it as another task that they need to do. And this is where I really admire good leaders, because they really tackle things head on. They understand what is lacking in their skill set, and they want to go after it. They will like seek out the best expertise. They will try to read, you ask them to read something, they'll read it, they'll understand it, they'll analyze it. So that's where the good habits that they've already cultivated, which have led them to that stage in life, really come in handy. So yeah, when they're convinced, when they buy in to the fact that they need to be the public face, and they buy into the fact that they're not there yet. They're not naturally gifted public speakers who are going to light up the stage.
Yeah.
That's when they really understand that they have to work on it, and then they really work on it. They make it a project, and that's really where the magic starts happening.
Right. Okay. All right. Brilliant. Yeah. So you really need to be very, very serious about it when you need to give yourself this message that there is no other way around it. You have to fix it if you want to progress, if you want to have more promotions, or if you even if you have to get done with the task at hand, which could be IPOs.
Yeah. Yes, because it directly affects your business, especially when you can see other CEOs, other public CEOs. You can see your competition, for example, and they might have a CEO who's very outgoing. You see other great CEOs, like, everyone looks at and has an opinion about Elon Musk. Everyone has an opinion about Richard Branson. So you see these great leaders and you admire them. And if there is a part of you that feels like, I know I can do that, I know I can be there for my company, my clients, and myself, because it's really a win-win-win, then you understand that not having that presence, not having that kind of impact when you speak in public is actually having a negative effect on your company and on your brand, on your personal brand, on your professional brand, as a company. So why do that? Why take that risk when you can be a better version of yourself on stage and on camera? It's the same as perfecting your product. You wouldn't want to put out a half-baked product into the market. You're going to get negative feedback. So then why put out like a half-baked public persona that is going to not project the confidence, not project the expertise that you really want people to remember you for?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And also, I think that I remember my dad used to tell me when I was in my bachelor's, maybe, I think I was pursuing a media and marketing degree at that time. So he would tell me that you sell yourself every day. And I could understand a bit of what he was trying to tell me. But now that I've entered my own professional life, I can see what he was trying to. I mean, I can see through his lens now. You really need to have a public image, whether you want to believe it or not. You really have a digital presence by virtue of having Facebook and other social media accounts, and you are communicating, you are sending something out to your friends, to your colleagues, to the people, to potential business partners, potential bosses, everywhere. So you really need to have a curated, digital experience for the people who are going to engage with you. Now that we're talking about leaders and how they feel comfortable or not that comfortable when it comes to communicating, I've come across multiple debates or say discussions with regards to how introverts feel about communicating or how extroverts feel about public speaking. I had taken up a course with Vanessa Van Edwards, and I remember she telling us through her course that President Barack Obama is an introvert, yet he used to be a brilliant public speaker and still must be. So do you think that affects a person's ability to speak to a lot of people and to speak in front of camera if you're an introvert?
Only to an extent. So I would say that if you flip the question, for an extrovert, yes, it might be easier to begin. Just if you look at a beginner public speaker, introvert versus extrovert, an extrovert has already been in situations where maybe they've been the life of the party. Maybe they're the ones who've been like telling jokes to their friends. They're known as the entertainer of the group. Maybe they're the ones who feel energized after interacting with a lot of people. They draw their energy from people. So yeah, in a way, an extrovert might have a little bit of an advantage only at the beginning. But after that, it's a level playing field, because public speaking is an art and a skill that you have to learn. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's a cliche, but it's totally true. Well, the first time I spoke, back when I was a 22-year-old fresh graduate, is totally not the time, not the way that I'm going to be speaking now. I can feel myself. I can feel that I have changed so much over time and evolved so much because I sought out speaking opportunities every chance I got. I can probably tell you now that I probably talked on more than 100 stages in 3 different countries, and not all of them big, some tiny stages, some where I've been, just in the middle of a circle of people sitting on the floor. But because of all those experiences, I've gotten better. So an introvert might have a little bit more of a challenge in beginning, but after that, for sure. And if an introvert practices their skill set, if an introvert is completely serious about the art of public speaking and they want to get better, if they make it their mission, then for sure they're going to be like head and shoulders above any extrovert in their own friend circle. And also, another important distinction to make here is that now there's the distinction between introversion and extroversion is not very clear anymore. It's not like black and white. There are a lot of people that are in a gray zone in the middle. You can have elements of introversion and elements of extroversion, in the same personality. And actually, a lot of us are somewhere there in that space.
In that
very
gray
few
area.
of us. Yeah, very few of us can say we're like 100% introverted. And I think a lot of psychologists are saying that doesn't even exist. So it was kind of a false demarcation. It depends on the environment that you're in, how comfortable you're feeling, how your own perceptions and preconceived notions lead you to act in certain ways with certain people.
Exactly. And I'll have to agree with you. I remember I just delivered a communication skills training at Sustainable Development Policy Institute in Islamabad, and there was this one question, and I was talking to them about confidence. Yeah, confidence, how to build confidence, and how to destroy fear, and then body language. So there's this one question about exactly what are those steps to build confidence, and of course there are a few, but then there is something when it comes to public speaking, you really have to stand up. You really have to, give yourself a confidence pill, because if you're not doing that, you're giving yourself confidence poison. Every time you have a good idea and you're not voicing it out, you're telling yourself that you're not good enough. And that, kind of grows on you. And again, I think as I was telling workshop participants that day, that if you really want to be more confident, you just have to do things that you haven't been doing in the past, and wrong things that you have been doing in the past. You really have to stop doing those things. So sometimes it's as simple as that.
This is a very good point about how, like, each time you shut yourself down, you're poisoning your own self-esteem and your own self-confidence a little. And I would, take that a step further and say that I really think that one of the best ways to counter imposter syndrome is to put yourself on a stage and make yourself talk about something that you're passionate about, something that you excel in, something that you have experience in. Because the moment you talk on that stage, it's incredibly gratifying and legitimizing. It's a great experience because you feel like people actually are listening because they want to know. They want to know what you have to say. And how incredibly legitimizing is that? Where you've kind of gone through some part of your life thinking that I don't have anything to say, I don't have any new value to add. Who will listen to little old me? Turns out a lot of people.
A lot of people, yeah. And I think these are the exact messages that we keep telling ourselves before we eventually, decide and speak up. That who's going to listen to me? I don't have anything valuable to add. So these are some of the most frequent obstructions that we are faced with.
Yeah.
Achha, Nausheen, so final question. So last question. And that I've seen a lot of people who are very good communicators in terms of when it comes to speaking in their own native language. And now that you're in China, I'm sure you must have been through similar experiences with the leaders that you've been training. But in South Asian countries, especially in Pakistan and India, where there's a lot of emphasis on being very good in speaking English, people who have good ideas, they face a lot of trouble uh, giving voice to their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And even in my own experience, and again, this is something that we tell in every communication skills training, that language is something else. It's not a skill, it's an art. Communication is a skill and an art as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to confuse both of them. But even in
Mm-hmm.
my own experiences, I have seen that people who are good in English language, who can speak good English, they're also the
Mm-hmm.
ones, they're generally the ones who are good at communications in Pakistan. I wouldn't say
Mm-hmm.
the same exact thing about people who are outside Pakistan, because then everybody who can speak English must be or should be a good communicator, and that's not the case. But
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about South Asian countries, this is what my experience has been. What's your experience?
So this was a huge and a very interesting question, because a lot of the Asian CEOs that I've been working with for sure are native Mandarin speakers. They're not native English speakers, and they have varying levels of proficiency in English. Now, one of the facts
Mm-hmm.
that we have to accept about the world is that English is still the universal language. If you want a maximum audience, you need to be speaking in English, or
Mm-hmm.
at least converting what you're saying in English, translating. So we've actually had the one question that CEOs always ask me, like almost always, is, can I speak in Mandarin and can you add subtitles? And I always tell them, it's always a possibility, but can we try not to do that? Because I want people to hear your words, not read them.
Mm.
When you have a foreign language that you're, like a foreign language film or a documentary that you're watching, you're reading, you're not paying attention
Yeah.
to the person. And if you're doing it as a personal brand building exercise, you want people to pay attention to you, how you talk, what expressions you use. So I try my best to get them to talk in English, and I tell them a couple of things. One, your English does not need to be perfect. Absolutely not. No one is expecting your English to be perfect. When they know that you're not a native English speaker, they're not holding you to the same standard as they would be holding a native English speaker to. What they're interested in knowing is about your experience, and only you can talk about it. A random person cannot come and talk about your experience.
Precisely.
You can talk about it in broken English. You can talk about it with an accent. But does it affect their confidence? For sure, 100%. I have seen the same speaker talk in Mandarin and in English, and there is a big difference. But that is where the training comes in. That's where they need to be coached to get them to a level where they can be as comfortable in both languages. Now, you made a very interesting point about most of the speakers from South Asia that are great public speakers being English speakers. And I also think that has to do with the fact that how did they get there? These are you could probably say they are the most ambitious people who wanted to have that level of proficiency in another language, because they wanted to be international. They wanted to kind of rise above. They wanted to be known in the world arena, so to
100%.
speak, right? So you can kind of trace it back to their ambition and trace it back to how much hard work they actually put in. I can tell you at my TEDx experience, there was a Mandarin speaker who was delivering her speech in English for the first time on a public stage. And you could see, and this was a very senior leader. She was, advisor to a lot of the tech CEOs, very respected person in the AI industry in China. And you could see that she was doing it for the first time, but she did it, like she killed it. She did it on stage, and actually after a few minutes into her talk, she kind of tried to become more comfortable. And yes, I don't think she was as natural as she would have been in Mandarin, but what a wonderful start. She did a TEDx talk in English for the first time. Like
for the first time she was on a stage, that was a TEDx talk.
The first time she was on a stage speaking in English, because she had done Chinese talks before. Yeah. It's the first time she's on a stage speaking in English, she did a TEDx talk. Like, how awesome is that? Now she can do whatever she wants. Like, she's going to go on many other stages speaking in English. And how many more channels does that open up for her? She can attend international conferences and talk in English. It's really is that taking that first step. So yeah, it's about being confident enough to not care I guess you will always care. But it's about being confident enough to be okay with not being perfect on that stage the first time, because you're
I
not
think
going to
especially
be.
with language and especially with communication skills, you can never be perfect. There is
Yeah.
always room for improvement. Even for the best
Mhm.
communicator in the world, I'm sure there
Yeah.
must be something that he or she can
100%.
do better. And what we do is that we see somebody who is excelling at both English language and, of course, communication skills. And they're probably
Mhm.
on the fifth stage of development while we're still on the first or the second, and we try to impersonate that person or be there where he wants to be and skip the journey in between. So I
Mhm.
think, and again, this is what I keep telling myself. I have so many books right in front of me, and they generally talk about communications and how to connect with the other person. And while there are some remarkable, actionable plans in those books, I think it all comes down to probably two main things. One, you really need to be a wonderful listener if you want to connect and get through to the people, and that is a quality, and I'm sure you would attest to it, that leaders have. And
Yeah.
the other is what you just said. You just have to do it. But even for the very first time, you just have to do it with whatever practice you have. And like the lady who, for the very first time, had to speak on stage in English, and that was a TEDx talk. So I'm sure before that, it must be very difficult for her. But the next talk she's going to deliver, she is
Yeah.
going to excel at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Just doing it for sure. It works in so many domains and for so many industries, and it totally works over here.
Like
Yeah.
it works when you change your posture. When we talk about
Mhm.
body language, when you're lying on the bed, you have different thoughts coming into your mind. When you just sit up and stand up, the thoughts change. You put yourself in a more actionable situation. So I think it's
Mhm.
again, it somehow resonates with the point on just doing it, whatever you've put your mind on to, just do it. So yeah, thank you so much, Nausheen. I'm very, very grateful to you that you took time out of your schedule and joined us from China. And uh, I think I've one of the most meaningful conversations with, and this is probably the first time I've had a, a podcast designed for leadership communications and communication skills. And I think we really need to have
Mhm.
more of these, especially in Pakistan and South Asian countries, because there are so many myths to bust. And if I could have the opportunity of having another one later with you, then I would love to talk about the
Mhm.
myths that you've busted.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. That sounds like a great follow-up episode. Yeah. And thank you so much again for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you.
The players all ours. Thank you so much, Nausheen. Inshallah, we'll see you soon.
Cool. Thanks,
Take care.
Amar. See you
Thank you.
later.
Bye bye.